Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Today on the podcast, we're talking to a native New Yorker who had a great career in everything from 800 meters all the way up through marathon success. Lots of Ivy League titles, Patriot League Coach of the Year many times, an extensive, long-lasting coaching career with great success, both at Penn and at Lafayette College. Honorary starter at the Penn Relays, lots of great history and lots of lives impacted. Somebody who started in the 60s and into this millennium. Welcome today on the podcast, Julio Piazza. Hi, Julio.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about your origin story. When, where, and why did you first get into running?
When I was a little kid growing up, I always wanted to be on a high school team. I didn't know what sport, but I just knew I wanted to be on a high school team and have the camaraderie and be part of something. I always enjoyed playing sports, and I wanted to continue that when I went into college, just to give me an identification and a bunch of people that had the same goals and ambitions as myself. At the time, I lived in Brooklyn, New York. I was fortunate enough to get to go to Brooklyn Tech, which was one of their best schools in New York City. They had been city champs in football for the past 2 years. It was the fall. It was football season. I knew nothing of the fact that there was organized cross country. And I went out for the football team. I thought I was pretty fast. I said, I'll try out for N. They said, everybody over there that wants to try out for N, go over there. Those who want to try quarterback, go over there. I got to run two patterns. The guy that was trying out for quarterback threw one 20 yards behind me, and the other one threw past 20 yards over my head. And I said, everybody who's still interested, come back tomorrow. And it seemed like half the school was out. So I heard that there was a cross-country intramural that Friday. So I said, okay, I'm going to go out and run the cross-country intramural. So the funny thing was, they jogged us on the course before we raced the course. It was 1.25 miles. And we were all tired after jogging the course. We had a little before the race started. But I finished third in that race. And the coach, Ed Zarin, was a fantastic coach, great motivator, longtime coach. He said, everybody who finishes in the top 10, you'll come down, we'll give you a patch. So I go down there, and I really didn't know what to expect. But one of the guys that finished first or second, Jimmy Gomez, he says, hey, do you want to join the team? I said, we can do that. When we went in to get our patch, he said, your coach, we'd like to join the team. He said, great. That was the whole point of having the intramural. That's how I got into it. It was by chance. If I didn't meet Jimmy Gomez outside of the coach's room before we went in to get our patch, who knows what would have happened. But my life, honestly, Matt, was certainly enriched by my association with cross country and track and field. I personally feel that the people that go out for track are just great people in general, depending on their ability. And it certainly gave me an identity, but it's also enriched me in so many ways.
What year was that?
I started in 1964. We walked onto the team and, started running, loved it. Coach Zauer was extremely well organized, cared about track, loved track, and was a winner. And just an editorial comment on the side, it saddens me that there are so many potentially great high school athletes out there who never get a chance to show their stuff because there was no coach to really guide them who had expertise and love of the sport. But I was certainly blessed that Z was extremely knowledgeable, loved the sport, knew what he was doing, kept everybody motivated. he gave T-shirts out when he ran 250 miles. You got a 250-mile club shirt, then 500, then 750. If you got to 1,000 miles as a distance runner, you got a meet jersey with your name on the back. He had similar shirts for hurdlers and shot putters and jumpers, to keep everybody motivated. He had a big team. I started running at the time in New York City. There was varsity, junior varsity, and scrub. And I was running scrub my freshman year and trained hard. Like I said, Z was a great coach, and I wound up being city champ scrub.
Wow. What equipment did they give you? Singlets, and what about shoes? What'd you run in?
Nothing.
You train. What'd you
only thing you had to mind your own shoes, own spikes. The only thing that they gave us was the sweats and a meat singlet. My high school coach was also chair of the phys ed department. So we got money from what they called the GO, the government organization. Everybody had to pay, back at the time, it was 50 cents to join the GO. I think that he tapped into that to get the shirts that he gave us for motivation.
You said he was a great motivator. What kind of stuff did you get from him that first year? And what was your mileage and training going from, I was tired jogging the course, to 80 miles a week and upward?
Every week we would have a team meeting, and he was a great communicator and also very funny. It was like going to a nightclub, and I just couldn't wait for Friday afternoon's meeting just to hear what he had to say. But at the meeting, we had meets on Saturday, talk strategy and what to expect, etc. We filled out diaries. And, what you did that week, warm up, cool down, the workouts. At the time, I was running about 30 miles a week for my freshman year. There was also a joke, and not a joke, but we got these T-shirts for running 150 miles. If you put more than 2 miles down for warm up and cool down, you're padding your diary. That doesn't count. You can only put 2 miles down. It was all this peer pressure, fun, teasing at the team meetings. Yeah, and everybody was looking over everybody's shoulder. You didn't do that. You didn't do the cool down. So you were policing yourselves, but it was also part of the camaraderie that went on at the team meetings.
Yeah. Well, one thing that happened to me, dramatic, right about the day school started, after we had a couple weeks training camp in high school my junior year, we get to school and the team is called down to the vice principal right before classes start. And he said, your coach resigned because we weren't paying him. So we got to find a coach or you guys don't have a team. And we're like, just find a breathing body. We will coach ourselves. And we ended up having a guy who knew nothing about it. It was just a young guy who said, okay, yeah, he's a baseball coach. He said, I'll drive the van. And that's an interesting perspective on the opportunities that come. What about your progression? City champ as a freshman, what?
Scrub.
As a scrub, it's okay. It's at the level you're competing. What about your identity as a runner? Did that form that year that I am a runner? And then what was your progression with success in high school?
Having that success breeds success. I had some success, and then you want more. I think the thing that enabled me to have some of the success I did, I trained the whole summer. I started running miles, and when I went back my sophomore year, my goal was to make varsity. And I made varsity as a sophomore, and by the end of my sophomore year, I was number one man on the team. I was pretty happy with that. We ran on a traditional course. It's unfortunate now it doesn't have the cachet that it once did when I was growing up, running at Courtland Park every weekend, where Marty LaFleur, anybody who was anybody up and down the East Coast, ran at Courtland Park. So it was nice because y'all always knew you had this measuring stick to mark your progression as you moved up the table. My freshman year, I ran 14:40, 14:8. And then my sophomore year, I ran 13:40 and was number one man. I don't remember where I finished at cities. My junior year, I ran 12:56. which was a big barrier then for high school kids. Breaking 13 minutes on Vancouver was a pretty big deal. My senior year, I ran 12:37, which at the time was the third fastest ever on the course. I think the two people that ran faster were Marty McQuarrie and Dave Patet.
What was that course like by the time your senior year with the distance, and what was the layout of the course? Did you have strategic move marks, and how did you run those races?
My junior and senior year, I just went out with the leaders. I enjoyed running cross country because I felt at the time I was the horse and the jockey. And you just can't roll flat out. You have to have some strategy, and I enjoyed that part. Then, well, it was flat for a half mile. Then you went through a cow path that had some sort of, we called it the cow path, a series of rolling hills. We crossed the bridge, and then we went back where it was basically all uphill for about 3/4 of a mile, and then downhill, and then another half mile to the finish. My race plan, 9 times out of 10, was once we got to the hills, to work as hard on the hills without overworking the hills, without going all out, because a lot of the times the athletes that I was running against, for the most part, weren't ready or as trained to go hard at that point. They would back up and wait to the downhill. They knew you have to save yourself something for the second part of the race, but I'd use that part to push myself. When you're a distance runner, that's what you have to do. It's not like a half weight and kick or whatever. You still have to push yourself and deal with the pain that's part and parcel of cross country. And part and parcel of that cross country was, unlike a 10K road race, when you're going uphill, it's like doing an interval. You have to push yourself up to the top of the interval and then recover. So I always tried to work that part of the race and separate myself from the rest of them.
That time frame, 64 to 68 or so, were you paying attention to LaCorey and other results and other runners around the country? When did the interest of colleges in you first show up?
It basically started my sophomore year. Coach said, you're talented. You can use this as a way to get to college. At the time, unfortunately, there wasn't the internet, and there was no way to really track everybody and find out what they were doing or what was going on. But there was always that track grapevine and people who was who. But the top runners knew each other, and we would see each other at Vancouver Park. And hey, how you doing? So you ran this, and we talked that way. But there was no tracking of athletes besides the Northeast Corridor who ran at Vancouver Park, and then you would read the results on the paper and you knew, but there was no somebody on the internet and seeing what they were doing, or workouts that are posted on the internet, or like there is today.
The college interest, when did that ramp up, and who talked to you first, and how did Penn win you?
It's funny how life's twists and turns affect you. At that point in time, you got a lot of recruiting letters for the schools that actively recruited me. Harvard recruited me, but they said the grades weren't quite where they needed to be, so they wanted me to go to prep school for a year. Penn was recruiting me, Cornell, Villanova, Georgetown, and NYU. Those are the schools that eventually bubbled to the top. And at the end of the day, it really came down to Penn or Villanova. Needless to say, Villanova's reputation spoke for itself. They treated me real well. We went out to dinner in New York, invited me down to campus. But Irv Machon, he was the assistant coach at Penn, and he had gone to NYU. And my high school coach, Ed Zauer, went to NYU. And he had a tremendous impact on my life. And when it was, time to pick a school, first of all, he realized the importance of a great education. But he had his ear pretty close to the ground at that point in time. Jim Tuppeny, who had been Jumbo Elliott's assistant coach, got the head job at Penn. And he said he was mentored by Jumbo. He knows what he's doing. And I know he's working hard because the other athletes that he's in touch with. And if you go to Villanova, you're going to be part of a great program and part of a great legacy, but you're going to be just a cog in the wheel. If you go to Penn, you can lay the foundation for some great teams, but at the same time, you're going to get a great education. And my father went to the 8th grade. My mother went to the 8th grade. They were immigrants from Italy. And that's as far as you had to go in Italy at the time. And they said, Julio, we can't help you. You do what you think is best. And admiring my coach and respecting my coach, I eventually decided on Penn. But coincidentally, when I was going down to my visit to Villanova, on the train ride down, I sat next to this guy, Cy Samuels, and I don't know he probably started talking to me because I had no poise or anything like that. And he said, where are you going? What are you doing? I said, I'm going down to Philadelphia, then went out to Villanova to look. And Cy Salmon, he was on Penn's board of directors, and he said, you should really go to Penn. It had no influence, but yet it had some influence. It was just a one-time meeting.
It's a great part of the story now to look back on. Did you learn Italian growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke Italian at home. We always spoke Italian. That's one of the things that surprised me is no one taught me how to speak English. We spoke Italian at home, and by the time I went to first grade, I knew how to speak English. I don't know how it happened, but I did. It just shows you the intelligence of all children, how they teach themselves and put them out in the right way, tell them the right way to say words, and teach themselves how to communicate. When you're older, this is how you learn how to play the piano, or this is how you learn how to do that. When you're a little baby, you don't know how to do anything. And I marvel at the intelligence of kids. Little babies.
By the time you had finished high school, had you run at Penn Relays?
Yes, a couple of stories there. When I was a sophomore, Z took us down and we got into the high school distance medley at Penn. He said, we're not going to do anything while we're there, but I want you to know where the bathroom is, how to warm up, how this whole thing operates so you're not intimidated or unsure of what you need to do. So we went down there and ran, and we were fortunately good enough to get into the race. That was good enough by itself. And then my senior year, we went down. We won the high school DMR. I remember my teammate Barry ran the 3/4 leg, and I remember thinking as I got the stick, we were in first place. Dang. The only thing I can do now is look bad. I was good friends with Z for the rest of my ride. And Z said, going around the first turn, I don't know if you're familiar with Penn and the scoreboard and the clock's there. And he goes, slow down. He said, Julio, you switched gears in one stride. I slowed down, and then by the quarter, 2 kids passed me, and I was happy to hang out. Then when we got by the clock the last time, the quarter to go, I took off down the back straightaway and maybe ran a little too hard at that point in time because Penn has huge turns. The straightaways at Penn were shorter than the turn. I remember thinking, I'm on this turn an awful long time. But fortunately, it all ended well and we won. And that was nice. We set the state record and we missed the national record that Marty and the Quarries team had set the year before by about 2.5 seconds.
You agreed to go to Penn. What was life on campus as a student athlete at Penn there at the end of the 60s?
I think there's 2 questions there. What was it like being an athlete? But what was it like being a student? The athlete part was a little surprising to me in that having watched TV and whatnot, I thought the athletes at Penn were going to be a little bit more revered than they were. I didn't get a sense of that when I was being recruited because I'm hanging around other track guys who grew up in track. But it wasn't like we were big men on campus or anything like that I had in my mind's eye thought that we might be. You're on track? Nice, good, happy for you. But that was, I think, away from most sports at that time. It was pretty interesting, though. My freshman year, I think we invaded Cambodia or bombed Cambodia. And then there was student protests. And my freshman year, exams were optional, you know, well, optional. And then I took the option.
What did you major in starting freshman year?
And as I told you before, I went to Brooklyn Tech, which was an engineering school. And my father, as I also mentioned, we were immigrants. And my father said, you want to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, something that's going to put bread on the table. So that's one of the reasons, again, funny how life works out. I only took the exam when I was there in 8th grade to please my dad. I'm working towards your goal. He's a dutiful son. Fortunately, I did well and got to tech, so I was going to be an engineer. Going to school, I read the Sports Illustrated. Kids in my class are reading Popular Mechanics. My freshman year, I decided I did not want to be an engineer. I was going to be it was decided between a history major or a sociology major, so I became sociology.
What about your initial success at Penn? By then, had you been given equipment?
By then we got training shoes and spikes and sweats and whatnot. It's funny. At first, I thought it was a great thing. You could put your clothes on a pin, bring them over, you hand it in, and then they'd give you clean stuff. I go, wow. But how lazy was I? You had to walk with 4 minutes, 5 minutes to touch to get the stuff. Instead of changing it every day, it became like a once a week thing.
Yeah, ours was right in the locker room. We had the cage in the locker room. What about you finding your events in track and the training mileage and training approach? How'd that change for you?
It didn't change too much. Z had his doing mileage and running intervals, basically the same way. I think that's one of the things that has really substantially changed for the better in terms of the different coaching it's not even a technique. It's just how it has evolved into more threshold running, longer intervals. We never really did longer intervals when I was training. If we during cross country, we did longer intervals, but for the most part, during the track season, I never remember doing anything more. When I was an undergrad, it was more about a half mile or miler indoors, though I loved cross country the best. We never did anything more than 600 on the track. No longer, steadier stuff to build up a better anaerobic base. Our anaerobic training was more 400s, but there was no anaerobic training for 800 3/4 even miles as that they do now. And I think that betterment in training techniques has vastly improved the times that run. I'm a good friend of Matt Centrowitz, and we talk about the Dillinger. You follow him, and he was running 1340, getting a bronze medal at the Olympics, in 1964, I think it was, or 64, 68. Then, up until the mid 80s, if you're running sub 14 for the 5, you're humped. Now, you better be running sub, and even to put it in better perspective, talking about that Prefontaine, 1320, when he ran that last mile, the Olympics, that was like no limits. Now, 1320 at that pace, which I think is ungodly for these people to run the 1250, 1252, 1253, whole different ballgame. That's
But 1320 is just under the qualifying standard now.
Yeah.
What about your goal setting? So when you arrived as a freshman, what did you think was possible in your early meetings with the team and the coach? What did you see happening in your career? You're at this point, you are a runner. That is part of your identity.
Well, right. And I think, there was not as much goal setting by the coach as would have been maybe beneficial to me. We wanted to do well. We wanted to win. But in terms of saying, Julio, we're going to train you to run 359. And this is what we're going to do to get you there. Not to sound so much old school. He's the coach on behalf. I think there's no communication, which I certainly think that there is now. And It's not as much of a collaborative thing. How are you feeling today? What do you think we could do? This is what I have in mind for you. Jesus, my son, who was also a runner, sent me some workouts that Nico Young,
Yeah, Nico, yeah.
he sends me workouts that videos of what he did. It's unbelievable. But you can see that collaboration between coach and athlete. This is what we're going to do. This is what we want to accomplish. But more importantly, how do you feel while we're doing this?
Yeah. Famously, Jumbo Elliott was very hands-off. He'd show up right before they were going to run, take out his watch, stand in the little hut, the time they're coming around every lap, and pretty hands-off the rest of the time. So your coach, mentored by Jumbo, probably brought some of that philosophy with him of how to deal with athletes.
And just as an aside, you're talking track, and I think that it's great reminiscing and remembering the things that you had forgotten. I think one of the great things about Villanova, they had extremely motivated athletes. And Tom Donnelly, who was a part of that team, went on to be a fantastic coach. I think he was one of the best coaches in the country, but I think he just found his niche at Haverford College and was happy staying there. I think he could have moved down to Villanova or some other big time programs, but that was not his personality. But as a work ethic and competitor, scary. I remember reading in Sports Illustrated, they won the Nationals. It was out at Wyoming, running into snow, and he had mono. And
yeah, you had a lot of great colleagues and coaches up to this point, and you would, of course, run into the Villanova juggernaut at Penn Relays. What was the team's approach to going against? I've interviewed Marty and a couple of the Canadians who were down on those teams where they had that 13-year streak of taking all the major championship relays, and they were almost untouchable. But you guys were a powerhouse team too. So what was the expectations of going into Penn Relays for you guys in DMR, 4 Mile, and things like that?
Again, I think it would have been, Tubb was a great coach, and there was not the motivational things that I think might have helped us to get over the top. The kids on the team, this is what I was trying to refer to back when I was talking about Tom. I think the kids on Villanova, knowing what traditions the Irish kids, the Donald Walshes, the Frank Murphys, and the Noel Carrolls, and what have you, I think they established a work ethic that permeated the team. You knew what to expect when you went there because that was the culture that they had established. Talking to some kids from Villanova, he said, we do the big stick. The big stick, we know we do a lot of miles. And if you're not doing the miles, it's not happening. But we try to establish our own culture at Penn. Was happy to say we qualified for nationals, for 3 years, and we did well. But to your question, going back to that, we had the Tom Donnelly of our team was in our senior year, Carl Borton, who ran sub 4. He set the standard for us to work hard and set goals, and we're going to kick these guys' ass. Our junior year, fortunately or unfortunately, we finished second in the distance medley race, second in the 4 mile, and second in the 2 mile relay, all to Villanova. And we were pretty psyched, pretty proud of that accomplishment because we know we beat some other good teams in doing that. And we felt that we had a core to challenge them next year. And talking about Carl, he finished 6th at the outdoor AAUs his junior year. He ran 4 flat 0.8. Needless to say, that was a big deal for you pick 4 flat 0.8 today. Then it was the real deal. And he was asked to go on some trips to Europe. And he said no, because we're going to come back and we're going to win nationals.
Wow.
So he turned down the trip to go to Europe and compete and do the circuit because he knew he had to come back and do some big stint and put in the miles. And they stayed in Reverend Johnson's house, the university chaplain, who was a ex-Princeton Olympic runner, and he would go up to the Cape for the summer. So we had a place to stay, and we trained. And Carl got the Cape job working in the equipment room down at Penn, and I got a job working juvenile court downtown, which I had to be there by 9 o'clock. My senior year that year, we averaged over 100 miles from June 1st until after nationals cross country. But I tell you the story just to show you how motivational Carl could be. So he would take naps in the afternoon in the equipment room, and I was down at juvenile court. One morning, we're doing a 5-mile loop, but there's this place where you can cut off at 3 miles and go back. And we're a little slow getting up out of bed, and we're out and we're putting in our miles and yakking away. And I said, Carl, I'm beat. I got to go back. I got to take a shower. I got to get downtown. And he turns around to me and he goes, Piazza, you're finishing this 5 miles because I don't want to have to worry about you copping out in the middle of a cross-country race. And knowing Carl, you have to know Carl, it was easier to finish the 2 miles with him than to argue with him, just sleep. But the upshot to that story was at the Big 5 meet, it was a big deal. It was us against Villanova at the Big 5 meet. There were more people at that meet than I've ever seen it at a cross country for a local meet. Now, people need this to say ICs and nationals and elite championships were big. But anybody who would follow track and field and cross country in Philadelphia was at the meet to watch, and they beat us. But what was just gratifying to me at the end of the day is out at nationals that year, we finished third. They finished fourth. So in a way, it was a little bit of validation for me on a personal note that we went to Penn and we finally got to beat them at a meet that was meaningful in our senior year cross country. Then, unfortunately, we handed off the lead to Carl. It was a 4th rack point mile. He had gotten sick during the indoor season, wasn't quite himself. And we handed off in first by a good bit in the DMR. And Carl got past with 150 yards to go. So, we wound up losing that race. The next day, we lost by a 10, the 4x1 to Bob Wheeler and Duke. And then we were done. No, we were certainly motivated to beat them. It just unfortunately wasn't in the cards, but that's sports too. You learn a lot. It reveals your character. It hardens you. The NCAA justifies it because they're life lessons. I think the NCAA does that as it's good PR. But at the end of the day, it is the truth. It certainly enables you to take the pluses and minuses, the wins, the losses. You have to work for the wins, and sometimes you don't get the wins, sometimes you do, but it's character building, what it's really all about.
What about your own personality and personal development there? You said you were not full of, outgoing nature there on the train, but by the time you graduated, you were selected team captain. How was that?
I wish I were a better captain, to be honest with you. I think, unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't the guidance that made it to be there. Let's pick the guy who was going to be the best leader. It was by default, who was the best guy on the team. I was certainly well-liked, and to have that, hey, guys, let's circle up, and this is what we're going to do. At that point in time, I did not have that in me. It was an honor because it was voted on by your teammates, or what the coach did not pick the captain, but the kids on the team voted for the captain. So it was an honor that way. I wish I had been a better captain, to be honest.
As your end of your college career comes, what did it look like in the world for you to continue running? And at what point did you think you would be coaching?
Yeah, obviously, good questions. Going back to high school, Coach Zarwin, I was born in Italy, and so I had a dual citizenship, and he said it's going to be a lot easier to make the Italian team as opposed to making the U.S. teams. And I graduated in 1972, and I continued to train and run. There wasn't the support system in the clubs that there is today. I wish that had been a little bit better so I could have had access to good coaching and workouts and things like that. But Carl was also very ambitious. We trained ourselves in approach ourselves. But fortunately, we were part of the Philadelphia Pioneers, and Alex Woodley, he paid our way to meets. We had a way of continuing to train together with someone of high caliber, but also someone who was supporting us financially in order to get to meets. I had a lot of fun traveling, going to meets. My father was a little bit disappointed that, is this all you're doing with your life is running? And I said, Dad, I can only do the running now. I can do whatever I want to do after. I think, fortunately for me, I was still single. If I think I had been married, it might have been a little different, but being single and having some fun, a normal career was not in the cards at that point in time. Worked some part-time jobs to make money. The only thing I was really doing was earning money so I could train and compete.
Moving to the Philadelphia Distance Classic, the marathon, you won a marathon. When was that switch to say, oh, I'm not running 2 laps on the track here?
As I mentioned before, my first love was cross country, and being able to be the horse and jockey at the same time. My natural inclination was to be a distance runner. But going back again, when I was at Penn, the steeplechase wasn't even a scoring event yet until my freshman year in college. It became a scoring event, and the longest distance on the track in outdoors was, they had at nationals at Burn. The longest race was 2 miles. To best utilize my skills at that time for Penn, I stayed in the middle distance area.
Having points,
yeah. If I had to do it over again, I would preferred to have been a true distance runner and run mileage and put in that stuff. But I was running the 800, 1500 my whole career, indoors and outdoors, while in undergrad. Going out post-collegiately, I knew my better events to do well were the 5 and 10. Because of that, my training evolved into more of a distance-based, type of training, more suited to those events. And in order to give me something to look forward to, there was a lot of road races. The first Philadelphia distance run, it was a big deal. The whole running community was excited that they were going to have this big race in Philadelphia. Trained hard for it, competed. Fortunately, I won. Things changed quickly. Besides winning the first year, I was proud of finishing in the top 10 the next 3 years, because my second year, I think it was, Lafayette came over and ran. So it was a whole different ball game. And Amby Burfoot, the guys that won Peachtree and things like that, came off it. For, I think I finished 6th 1 year and then 10th the next 2 years when I was really into it. Pat myself on the back.
It was a great accomplishment. You still have those medals?
I did. There's the Philadelphia Bowl. I have it up over there, which I got for winning the Philadelphia distance run, which is nice, and passed that on to my kids. And then it was the Bulletin Marathon and Bulletin Providence Marathon, and trained for that one. At the time, it was nice, and it's always nice working in.
What about your transition then to coaching? You coached at Penn. Was that your first coaching assignment, and how did that come about?
Yes, always remained close with top and officiated at Penn relays. To quickly summarize, trained from 72 to 76, really enjoyed it. Didn't everything too hard. I said, it's easier running than working. So I decided I wanted to try for the 80 team. And Tup approached me because they had just started the women's program at Penn. And there had been a woman there, Betty Costanza, who coached it when it was a club team, or she started as something to do as a club. And then it became a varsity team. And after 1 year, they were looking for a part-time assistant coach. And Tup said, you should apply for it, and I'm going to recommend you. And I know Betty, it's going to be a done deal, pretty much. So I applied for the job, got the job. And the only question, or when Betty interviewed me, this was 1979, I said, if it's okay with you, and it is a part-time job, I would like to train for the 1980 Olympics. And she said, fine. And so I trained and coached. The first day with the team was like a fish to water. But knew what I wanted to do. I've loved athletics since I was a little kid. Going back, we're talking about wanting to go for the high school team. I always loved athletics and the identity that it gave me. But being around the ladies and coaching them, I knew it was, like, as I said, a fish to water. I continued to train. I actually went over to Italy and I ran in their indoor championship. I finished 8th in the 3,000 at their national indoors. And that's when they had Koba, who had just won the European championship at 10K. I went back again later and ran in their marathon trials. And after that, when I was going back, I said, I'm not going to go all into their outdoor trials because the reality was it wasn't going to happen earlier start. It wasn't going to happen in front of. I remember thinking on the plane ride home or doing it, self-evaluation. I said, you had a great career, great memories. There's always things that could have gone better. As we talked about before, that's life. It is what it is. I trained as hard as I could. So when I put my head on the pillow, you could have done this, you could have done that. There was none of that. It is what it is. Be happy with what you accomplished. It was nice knowing that I had this passion for coaching and I can share my athletic experiences and growth as a person and as an athlete with the kids on team.
What else was going on in your life during those 5 years coaching at Penn? 5 Ivy titles. What else was going on in your life at that time?
Outside of track, I still ran just to stay in shape. It took me about 10 years after I stopped running competitively to run some road races for fun. I just knew what I was capable of, and I wasn't anywhere near that. It wasn't going to be fun for me. Friends had said, gee, you can run this road race and you can win. I said, no, I don't want to run just because I can win. I want to run to test myself. Then after about a 10-year period, I started running some road races because I'd set goals. I run as hard as I could to achieve those goals, but it wasn't near what I used to be able to do. But it gave me something to point towards it. And I still enjoyed training hard as I could at that point in time. What was interesting, I think maybe to answer your question there, it was at the birth of women's track. As I told you, when I was hired in women's track, it had only been varsity sport at Penn for 1 year at Title IX, but it was still growing. There wasn't a lot of great coaches as there are now. We got support, but not the great support that there is today across all sports because of the TV contracts and football contracts and basketball contracts. And that money trickles down. The staffs, especially at schools that want to be fair, are getting, like at Penn, they got great support. The athletes are treated extremely well, and the coaching is there and everything else for them to succeed and be the best that they can be.
What was surprising? Do you remember back on that term at Penn as coach? What were any revelations or surprises or self-discovery you went through there as a competitive runner and now a serious coach?
When you're an athlete and you're more in your own head, you're an individual and part of the team, and you enjoy the aspects of being part of a team, you're celebrating after wins or whatever. But the motivation as a whole, I was just worried about myself. I wasn't worried about what my teammates were doing or not doing. I think the revelation when I started coaching was I could see the sacrifices that each athlete was or were not making in order to be the best that could be. And that was my growth as a coach, was getting athletes to realize you only have this ability for a certain amount of time. And it's not an either or. I think when you're going to Penn or at Lafayette or at Courage, especially more at Lafayette, these kids weren't going there to be national champions. They were doing something there to enrich their lives, be part of something. But my goal there was to still win, because if you're not working towards something, you're wasting your time. You owe it to yourself if you're putting in the time to be the best athlete that you can be. If not, you're cheating yourself and cheating me. It was interesting watching different athletes go through that self-awareness of trying to find out how important track and field was in their life. And it was or command the kids on the team, because it's a crazy time in your life. You're young, you're with 2 to 4,000 other undergraduates that have different goals and ambitions. And for you to single out, yeah, you're going to devote X amount of time with this. And I tried to tell them, you can do both. It's not an either or. You just have to know what your goals are, define your goals, and then work towards them. You can be a serious athlete and have a certain amount of fun. You can be a serious athlete and be a great student. It's just that you have to have the self-discipline and self-awareness to accomplish those things.
You had great success at Penn. And what led to the transition to Lafayette, and how long did you think you would stay there? Ended up being 27 years. What was happening then that had you transition?
Betty gave me a lot of autonomy to do what I wanted to do. She was always supportive of me, but at the end of the day, and she gave me nice enough, at the time of being with the head women's cross country coach, but I wanted to be the head coach. And I applied for different jobs. I interviewed for different jobs. I was a finalist at Brown. I was a finalist at Dartmouth. The job that was offered, I got the job at Lafayette. I thought I'd go there, do a great job, and then move on. But as my high school coach told me, there are not that many good track jobs out there. I think, fortunately, now there are much better jobs. And they said there are jobs. When I was advising other athlete coaches who wanted to coach in college, I said, there's not a lot of great jobs. The AD doesn't want the track coach coming in and knocking on my door. I need more money for my travel budget. I need more money to send this kid to a special meet. As long as you're doing your job and you're not rocking the boat, they're happy to have it. And I still think that's the case at a lot of schools. You don't win in football. Franklin's fired at Penn State. Kelly at LSU's fired. You're not winning. So there's a turnover. There's an opportunity for you to get ahead as a coach. But there's not that opportunity even now, I think, in track and field coaching. If you're doing an okay job and the students give you he's a nice person, knows what he's doing. But to have a winning program, you have to have ambition and motivation, and also then the tools to succeed. And the tools to succeed are sometimes counter to what the school administration wants. So, it's tough. I still get a thank you letter from one of the kids. I said, you're better off being a high school coach, creating your own program, and being the king in your castle, as opposed to trying to work your way up to get a great head coaching job in track and field, because there are great coaches out there in track and field, but there's no turnover in track and field.
You had great success at Lafayette, so many Patriot League titles and successful athletes. What changed most over those 27 years then in the sport or in coaching methods and the growth of the sport?
I think that the thing that's changed most, and I think you can see this there are better coaches in high school. I'm still sad to say that there aren't a lot of great coaches. This is the same analogy that I was using about the turnover in college football coaches. If you're a decent high school coach, you're tolerant. If you want to be, there are more good high school coaches, ex-runners or teachers who want to give back. There are more high school athletes that are getting good coaching, and I'm happy about that.
Across all these many generations of runners that went through Lafayette College, did the kids know of your personal running background? Most of the time.
Very few. Some would take, hey, we'll go with this guy. What does he know? Going back to what I was saying before, the reality of coaching at Lafayette was they weren't coming to be coached by Julio Piazza. That was a bonus. But at the end of the day, they were choosing to Lafayette because they wanted to further their educational career and get a leg up on the rest of their career. The athletes that were prioritizing track and field were going to schools that had winning programs, established programs. That was part of their criteria in looking at where they wanted to go.
You've had lots of recognition and honors. I wanted to ask you which ones were more meaningful to you. You were in the Belmont Plateau Hall of Fame. You got invited back as a ceremonial referee at the Penn Relays and some of these returns and honors. Which of those were meaningful to you in different ways?
They're all meaningful in different ways, and everybody wants to be recognized. I think the Belmont Plateau Hall of Fame is wonderful, because it speaks to my accomplishments as an athlete. What is meaningful to me is the friendship, the respect that I get from athletes that are coached who regularly and periodically get in touch and let me know what a meaningful part of their life it was being coached by me at Lafayette and or at Penn.
That's a great impact you've had on a lot of people. What about leaving New York at age 18 there? And you're a Pennsylvanian now for a fucking time.
I went to Penn, and after you asked me, I was a sociology major. Then I got a master's in education and teaching certificate. So I taught at a junior high school here in the area. But then I gave that up in order to become a professional runner. I think we were trying to make the Olympic team, but my roots are here now in Philadelphia. And your undergraduate years are wonderful years. And I just watched a movie the other night, Biloxi Blue. Have you ever seen it?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, he was talking about his time at boot camp. And he said, I hated every minute of it, but I love it now. And he said, I was young. And when we get together, one of the stay in Philadelphia, play golf twice a week. We know with my friends that were on the team that's still in the area. We get along. I'm on the track and field board here and officiate Penn Relays. I get to give back. There's this program, Young Quakers, where the team has outreach with the people and the kids in Philadelphia. We had 120 kids down at Penn's new indoor facility. And also there were kids on the team there that were kind enough and ask about me and my past, and we talked, and we had give you a chance to reminisce, but also to say, they asked me, why are you doing this? And I said, it's an opportunity to give back. You have to have meaning in your life. You have to have values and goals that you're working towards. Not to be a little romantic, a little bit idealistic. I want there to be a better world. I want there to be more equality. So it's fun, enjoyable, motivational, and inspirational. Being around the young kids and trying to give back as much as I can. It enriches my life. I think you have to have purpose when you wake up every day. You have to have something you have to work towards and something to do. I'm lucky enough that A, I have good health, and B, I have something to look forward to every day.
Those adjectives you use, fun, motivational, inspirational, I think a lot of people use those words about you. On behalf of the whole running community, thanks for everything you've done to spur. I want to just call out one guy, an old teammate of mine who connected us, Jake Hepp. And did he coach with you at Lafayette?
Yes, he did. He was my right-hand man. He's a wonderful person. Not knowing what the culture was going to be at Lafayette, he certainly opened my eyes to what was going on there. But I think that his passion for what he did made him a tremendous asset to me as the coach. He was motivational with the kids on the team and working with them to get better. And we love to talk strategy and what to do, and that was half the fun. But he was certainly, for the time that he was there, I couldn't have done it without him. He was certainly my right-hand man, had a passion for the sport and knowledgeable about the sport.
Yeah. All the IUP listeners that'll like to hear Jake's name in this and the connection he had to your great career. All right, is there any other stories or people you want to get in here?
There are a lot of touching points, I think, to summarize. I think just on a personal level to you and I, as we were talking, this will not probably make the highlight reel. But my high school coach, Ed Zarwin, gave me the love of the sport. Also, he was so organized. And then it was one of the things that enabled me to be a better coach. He kept me a good coach without being organized, planning ahead. and what are you trying to accomplish and how are you going to get there. My college coach, there were some things I wish he had done a little bit differently in terms of that one-on-one time, but he certainly had a passion for the sport and wanted the best for us. One of his comments was to try to keep us on the straight and narrow. He said, girls are like streetcars. They come across every 5 minutes, so don't fall in love. And my teammate, Carl Thornton, if it wasn't for him, his ambition, I don't think I would have continued to run afterward as long as I did. Or just last story, how I got into running was after I graduated, I thought my career was over. I really hadn't thought about continuing my career. And he said, Julio, we were in the same master's program. And he said, you can't consider yourself a distance runner not having run a marathon. So he said, let's start training for a marathon. We trained for the marathon. And this was the first Penn Relays marathon. He won and I finished fourth, but then we were in good shape. So we said, let's start running some road races. And then one thing led after another, we both got into it. It wouldn't no, we credit each other, but more him than me at that point.
There we go. It's been great getting to know you a little bit and spending time with you, Julio, Coach Piazza. Thanks for everything you've done to affect all the lives you have, your contributions in the sport, and your great success. What a great career. It's great spending time with you.
Matt, thank you so much for the kind words, but let me tell you, it's been a genuine pleasure, and let me, pass on to you. I know it's a labor of love, and I just want to thank you for reawakening memories that we both had about our past and connecting the great running community that we're a part of. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thanks, Julio.
Thanks so much. And again, thank you for what you do.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.